Hello and welcome to another episode of Sensational She-Geek live from Yancey Street. Today is Friday, well, for me actually it's Thursday the 6th, but the day when you'll be viewing this, the earliest, I suppose, would be Friday the 7th of May. It is my husband's birthday, so happy birthday to him. Before we get started today, I did just want to do a little bit of a, let's say, mental check for everyone. It's been a bit of a crazy year, I'm sure, for everyone, for obvious reasons, and things have changed a lot over the past year, and people's lives are different than they were a year ago, not always in good ways, so I just wanted to kind of do a quick mental check here. I hope everybody is doing okay. If you have any issues or things you want to talk about, my inbox or whatever is always open if you really need someone to talk to, but I just want to make sure, all my listeners have, something to do, someone to reach out to if they need help with things, or are emotionally troubled or anything like that. I just want to check in on you guys, make sure you're doing well, because I know this year has been really long, and so far, even in 2021, it's May, but it's been a long year already, so just doing a quick mental check for everybody there. Take a few deep breaths, drink some nice, warm, calming tea, and read a book or read a comic, whatever floats your boat. Anyway, now that that's out of the way, this week, or this episode, 16B, we are going to be talking, of course, about the comic book picks, things that I really enjoyed from this week's comic books, and since it's a kind of a shorter list, the list consists of America Chavez Made in the USA #3, Eden #1, which is really a one-shot, The Invincible Red Sonja #1, Swamp Thing #3, The Good Asian #1, Bliss #7. Those are all the comics that I'll be talking about, and once I'm done with that, I only have a brief bit on the Falcon and the Winter Soldier behind the scenes. It wasn't much of a behind the scenes, if I'm being honest with myself, but I have just a few notes on that, I guess. And then we have some news. Obviously, there was some news about Loki on Disney+, and that's what premiered Monday, which I didn't have time to go through on my Monday episode, was the what did they call it? The teaser, the reels. There's the new MCU titles tease, I guess is what we're gonna go with that. They had some new footage and information about all of that. We also have the Bad Batch episode 1 that I'm going to be talking about a little bit as well. And then for the rest of the news segment, it's going to be taken up by news about Lady Killer, Red Sonja, Superman. Technically, it's more theories on Superman. And a little bit of news on Sailor Moon Eternal, which had its trailer drop today. So, pretty long episode. We've got some fun stuff to look forward to here. But we're going to go ahead and kick it off with comic book picks. Once again, these don't really have too much, they're not in any particular order, just kind of the order that I ended up thinking about what I actually read. And it's mostly good stuff this week. I have a few critiques of things, but they're fairly minor, and so this is mostly good stuff, and I hope you find some things here that you like, and if not, of course, like I always say, this is a fraction, a percentage of a fraction of, all the comic books that are out there that come out each week. So if I don't talk about something that's interesting to you, I'm sure there's plenty of stuff out there that will be of interest to you. If you just check out your local comic shop, they'd love to take your money. So, to start things off, America Chavez Made in the USA #3. I have been extremely pleased with the series, the first 2 issues of this, which is why I'm a little bit hesitant about talking about my critiques of this 3rd issue, because I have critiques this time. Basically, the new villain that was kind of an unannounced, unrevealed person has been revealed to be America's little sister, which was one of the heavy theories, the most obvious theories. But she is saying that they are from Earth, as opposed to the utopian parallel, and I'm not really sure how I feel about that. Basically, they are saying that America and her sister, whose name I actually don't recall, they were raised on a secluded island with their mothers, who were nurses from Brooklyn, at the insistence and assistance of some rich white guy. I'm sure somebody out there read that line when it said rich white guy and was like, oh, why do you have to bring race into it? Well, because that's, from people who are not white's perspective, usually that just like how you would say, if you're a white person, you would probably, identify as you were talking to a Latino person, you'd probably say that when you're describing them. This is them doing the same thing, just he's a rich white guy. It's just differentiating he's not like them, who are Latina. Anyway, they're on his island, and apparently they were there because the two girls, America and her sister, were sick by some weird virus, and the illness is returning now. I don't really mind the reveal of that illness. It just adds, a kink in the ring or whatever. I don't really think it's a good sign when someone comes in and completely flips a character's origin on their head without there being really any call to doing so. Like, for example, Carol Danvers a few years ago had the switch, her origin was kind of flipped on its head, where it was revealed that her mother was Cree. That did change her origin, in a sense, but it was done honestly. I wrote a long thing about this on my website if you want to check it out. It was done in a way that empowered her and really took the power of her origin from Mar-Vell, who was the original person to believe to give her powers, technically, and put it back in her control, where those were powers that She-Ara always had. They just had to be tapped into. So you can see that kind of thing is a very positive change, where they flipped her origin a little bit and made it so much better. This, having it where she was tricked somehow into believing she's from a different planet, or like that's like what her brain filled in because she was like traumatized as a child or something, like that's pretty messed up. Not really a positive change. So yeah. Not too sure about that, but we'll move forward and I guess see what happens as we wait and go on to the next few issues. There's only 2 more issues in this series, so it's a little bit worrisome for me because, as I've said, this change is not insignificant. This is a big change, so there's quite a bit to wrap up in these 2 issues, and it's taken them 3 issues to get as far as we are now. So we'll see. We'll just have to see what happens. I've really liked it up until this point, and this was kind of a shaky, faltering moment, but I'm not comfortable casting judgment until I kind of see what happens next. Eden number 1. Eden was actually a one-shot, so there's not going to be a number 2. It just says one-shot on the cover, too, which was really nice, because sometimes that's not super clear. This was a big wow issue for me. First of all, the format of it was prestige format, which is, I believe that's what it's called, which is magazine size format. And it was long. It was like 40-something pages, if not longer. So there was a lot. It was visually a very nice comic before you even go into it. I have to say, though, I don't recommend this story for the faint of heart, and I am about to spoil the hell out of it. And it's got a pretty wild ending. So if you do have interest in reading it, skip this section for a little bit. Basically, the plot of the story is there's this guy, he's a tattoo artist. Through artistic context, that's not something that's really said out loud, we discover that his wife and son died in a car accident some years ago, and his life has pretty much been a massive pit of depression ever since. Then this woman, Eden, comes into the shop. She gets a tattoo by him. She asks for a butterfly, has him do it freehand with no planning, nothing like that. He is surprised, but he makes her an amazing butterfly. When she leaves, his coworkers give him all this shit about not asking her out because they clearly had this chemistry. He thinks he's never going to see her again, but then she shows up 3 weeks later. She comes back for another tattoo, and to everyone's surprise, the butterfly that she had tattooed on her stomach is completely gone. This happens a few times. She comes back for a few different things. She gets a fox, a hawk, and a tiger. At one point, she and the tattoo artist get drinks and go home together, spend the night together. After he does the tiger on her, he finally gets the nerve to follow her to see what she does, where she goes after she gets these tattoos, how they always go away. She goes into a kind of hidden secret garden in the city, a clearly kind of like some kind of magical realm place filled with these beautiful impossible animals. She goes there, she lays on the ground, reveals her new ink, and screams in pain as the tiger that tattooed on her skin comes out of her flesh and becomes a real creature. The tattoo artist who sees this is obviously shocked, and he spots some of his other drawings, what he did on her, living amongst her little garden here. He flees the area, not really understanding what he just saw. And then there's a few pages of him thinking about the situation over and over again in his head. And then, at last, Eden returns to the tattoo parlor to get another from him. He guesses that she just wants that she wants something unique as usual, and he says he's got a surprise for her. So she's excited. She's done a few tattoos from him before. She knows kind of what his thing is. She obviously trusts him while he works, and they do some chatting. She doesn't know that he found out her secret, though. So when the tattoo is done, she looks in the mirror and is horrified because he drew on her back, tattooed on her back, his wife and son. His dead wife and son. That is pretty nuts. You get where this is going now. He thinks that they're going to come back because the way that she does these animals, right? So Eden sees this and she freaks out and flees the shop, saying that he doesn't understand what he's done. His boss saw that he tattooed his dead wife and son on this random woman and obviously fires him because that's really messed up. So then he chases after Eden. She gets into her little secret garden where she's panicking. She sees him there and she tells him she could handle simple creatures because they don't take very much for her to make. And it's kind of like a weird thing. We start kind of figuring out what's going on here and you just go, oh shit. At that point, her body starts writhing and snapping in horror-esque, horror movie-esque, bone-breaking ways. And she barely gets the words, "you killed me," out before you have to assume the connection to the brain died, and the body just keeps transforming in this horrible transformation, but she's probably, hopefully, not there anymore. It's grotesque. It pulls back the skin tight over her skull and her bones, leaving her twisted like a fleshy skeleton ball. All these and these discolored versions of the tattoo artist's wife and son are all that remains besides that absolute horrifying wreckage of what was once her body. The artist is actually shocked by all of it. Of course he's shocked by all of this. His wife and son, who have just kind of grown out of this woman, they are very blank in the face. He kind of touches the discolored skin on his wife's face, which kind of smudges and then gets discolored again in a way that I almost think it was her skin breaking and then healing itself because it's like too thin to even be touched. He looks over at his son, and his son runs off and, like, picks up a small animal in the garden and bites into it and eats it alive. And the tattoo artist kind of has to take a moment here at the end of because this is the end of the one-shot, to realize what he has done. There wasn't enough left for Eden to survive, and there wasn't enough of her to properly create them. So now he's just basically going to be stuck with these awful, mentally not there at all versions of his family, and the knowledge that he brutally murdered this poor woman who just wanted to give birth to a beautiful secret garden. Wow. I did not, I went into Eden just knowing that it was going to be kind of a fun tale of mysteries and things. This was pretty wild. Yeah, this was wild. I really enjoyed it, though. Don't get me wrong, this was awesome. This was like the movie Orphan. If you've seen the horror movie Orphan, there's that twist at the ending where you find out, like, what's going on. It's like that kind of twist where you just kind of go, oh god, what? Anyway, moving on. The Invincible Red Sonja #1 ended up being a lot of fun. It is, of course, by Amanda Palmer, Amanda Connor, someone else. Amanda Connor and Jimmy Palmiotti. Is that right? Yeah. They are husband and wife. Amanda Connor is known for a lot of her art, and they did a lot of Harley Quinn stuff anyway. The plot of this is kind of fun, so we'll just briefly go over that. It's basically Sonja. She's out riding with pirates. And they come across a fancy lady who is held captive by another pirate ship or something. The lady escapes. Later on, Sonja's ship is destroyed by sirens in the dead of night. She is rescued by the fancy lady and her new ship. And she explains to Sonja that she is headed to a big city to marry the prince there, and she wants to hire Sonja for protection because a lot of people don't want this wedding to happen. That's the general plot of this first issue. It actually starts somewhere further down the road that we have yet to see what's going on with that yet, but I guess we'll get there when we get there. The writing was fine. It was a little bit wordy, but it was a fun enough story. The art was tentatively good, I think. The faces kind of went from, like, fierce battle warriors to almost kawaii, like, kitty thing, so it's kind of odd, and Sonya was drawn both enormously buff and with massive tits. So a bit of dueling body shapes, I guess. The princess lady also was quite busty, in her, for some reason, harem-like outfit. Not really sure, but it's just kind of I guess it's just to be expected from a silly Red Sonja comic. It's nothing serious. It's just kind of a fun Red Sonja comic. Swamp Thing number 3. In case you missed it, I am reading the writer Ram V's Swamp Thing and Catwoman for the character of Poison Ivy, and if you're talking about Catwoman, also for the Jenny Prison covers because she's fabulous. In Catwoman, Ram V has Ivy, quote-unquote Ivy, being sold in a jar to some kind of creepy old art collector guy, which is obviously super weird. And here in this issue, Swamp Thing number 3, I finally get my answer on what is still considered canon as he writes her in this new era, I guess. Tom King, during Heroes in Crisis, killed off Poison Ivy in order to bring her back completely leveled up as a being of the green, just like, for the most part, just like Swamp Thing himself, in a way. Jody Hauser, in the Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy series, after that, established that Ivy can duplicate herself and basically can't be killed as long as there is still plant life out there. Thankfully, it does now look like that is what Rambi is going with as well. I was kind of worried he was going to ignore that development and just move on with, what he wanted to do. It looks like he is acknowledging that now. In this issue, he showed Ivy as two separate entities, Ivy being one of them, a clone of her who kind of she seems to retain the human side of Ivy outside the main Ivy body, who goes by Queen Ivy, who is that second figure, and we saw that established in the Joker War anthology story that had art from Laura Braga. I can't recall who wrote it, but it was Laura Braga art. So that's good. Bit of a relief, I suppose. Makes me really curious and excited to see what's going to happen here with the Ivy who is captive in Catwoman. I somehow doubt that Poison Ivy is going to be fine with any version of herself being taken captive. And Catwoman seems to think right now that she seems to not know that that Ivy has had this kind of update. She's looking for Ivy in Gotham, like she's one being. Like she's a singular being. So we'll kind of see if this is going to be a surprise to her to find that if this Ivy dies, Ivy will be fine. Now, the Good Asian number 1. I am really excited that I picked up the Sound Takeda variant cover as well as the main cover. I'm really, really pleased that I did. It was a phenomenally good issue. It follows a Chinese detective in America. He's based around, this is in 1937, I believe, as well, so it's in difficult times. His character is based around real-life Asian and Hawaiian detectives, which were apparently all the rage at the time, a bit of a phenomenon, despite the unpopularity of Asians in America. There is actually an author's note at the back of the issue that I very much recommend reading when you finish reading this first issue. It's really good and adds a great deal of context to what you may not have already known. So that's really fun. In the issue, the text bubbles are square when characters are speaking their native language. I believe Mandarin Chinese is what that would be. I'm not sure. And the text bubbles are circles when they are speaking English, which is actually pretty easy to catch on to that. There's no explanation of that anywhere in the issue, but it's something that if you're aware of comics and how lettering can actually be utilized as storytelling as well, just as color and text are. That's kind of what they did here, and it was really fun to come across, really fun use of lettering techniques. So we meet this detective on a camp on Angel Island. It's a basically detention camp for Chinese immigrants. Angel Island is an old base in San Francisco. It's kind of a big tourist spot now. It's for picture taking and things. I remember I worked for Bank in the West 2016, and I spearheaded a gigantic event for the company at Angel Island. At the time of that, the history of the island didn't particularly faze me, but and having learned more since then, it's kind of wild. The detective is here being detained because Chinese immigrants are being held while the government basically decides if they're legit or if they're going to send them back to China because they're, already sending money back to their family in China, or they're, not who they say they are, or whatever. Because remember, there is a long, bloody history, very ugly history of racism against Asian immigrants in America, I guess you should say, too. Being from California, I learned a bit about that hardship in school, but my husband was watching a show for the first time with me, and he learned about how Chinese immigrants were forced into hard labor and building railroads out west out here, and they were considered so expendable that the bosses wouldn't even wait for the workers to clear the area before setting off dynamite to create tunnels for the trains to go through, because, of course, capitalism over everything, right? The West was basically built on in a large part, it was built from Asian immigrant blood. So try not to forget that. In the story, there is some local drama going on, and this detective, he gets a local Chinese-American kid to show him what he's hiding, and it is a dead body, which is rotting there, and it's being hidden because the family who found it knows that they're Chinese, and they would be the ones blamed for this man's death. He's a white man. To make matters worse, the detective can tell by the way the man was killed that he was killed by a tong. Tongs are the names of the various Chinese games that popped up in cities like San Francisco in this era. Major problems for the police at the time. They were pretty much just brutal gangsters who came from China and just translated all that to America. Once again, I know I've mentioned this before, but definitely check out the show Warrior on HBO Max. If you're interested in all this history, it goes over a lot of that time period really, really well. The detective guy ends up hiding the kid's discovery from his white detective partner, knowing that he has to protect his family. And actually, earlier on in the issue, he was willing to let someone's family. There was a guy who was willing to let his family get pulled in for questioning to hide his dope addiction. And so that was, in that case, he stepped in and uncovered it and turned the guy in. But in this case, the family and this boy are clearly not at fault, and the body being discovered would put them at severe danger. So he is going to protect them. So we'll see in the next issue if he's successful in that, or if he's going to get tied up in some more dramas or what. But I'm really liking this, The Good Asian. I really enjoyed the first issue. And finally, for the comic book picks, we have Bliss number 7. This was a really good issue, and we only have one left to go. The plot of this basically goes, Benton, he's the guy, he's the older guy. Benton's son tries to give the goddess Leith her memories back, but ends up being knocked to the ground in a way that makes everybody kind of think he's dead. The minor god, who looks like a turtle, tells Benton what needs to happen, basically what the kid was just trying to do, and does his best to distract the goddess Leith by telling her the truth of how he and his brother gods tricked her into taking these memories from humans to make this drug, and ended up kind of getting her drugged and addicted on the way as well. Thinking that his son is dead, Benton succeeds in giving Leith her memories back, and she is horrified at what she's done. She decides to leave Benton and his son, and takes the lesser god guy with her as a reminder of what has happened here. Before she leaves, though, she reverses the river of Bliss, the bad memories, so anyone who drinks from it, instead of forgetting, they will remember what they previously forgot. Benton gets to his son and finds out he's still alive. Happy days. They're about to celebrate this whole nightmare being over when they're approached by Ren, who is the agent-type character who's been a part of this team, hunting down Benton for the work that he did for Leith, including the murder of her own mother while she was on the phone with her. She is apparently here with a whole team to take Benton down. So the trouble is not over. And I'm kind of curious, how is this going to be completed in one issue? My prediction on that is going to have to be Benton's going to have to pay for his crimes with his own life in order for his son to get out of here alive. I don't really see it going any other way. It's kind of, they definitely are going to want to have some kind of payment for everything that he's done. So really excited to see what happens in this 8th and final issue. This is a bit of a tearjerker series. It's very much on the fathers and sons. So I really enjoy it. And of course, Caitlin Yarsky's art on the interiors is drop dead gorgeous, as always. She does a great job of capturing the feeling of a world that is somewhere between fantasy and reality. But not like between, it's more like it's split. It has equal split of fantasy and reality in ways you wouldn't expect, and it's really cool. And that wraps up the comic book talk this week. Now we are going to go into Falcon and the Winter Soldier behind the scenes. I did mention this was going to be brief. It's going to be quite brief. Basically, I just had 2 takeaways. One, that the plot was meant to circulate around a pandemic, and for obvious reasons that had to be changed last minute, although I did talk about that a little after the finale episode aired, because I had heard about that already, but I guess it's nice to hear all of that confirmed. And my second takeaway is how many people of color they had behind the scenes, making sure that things were authentic and won the way that it would be in that kind of real-life scenario, and that's obviously what made this show such a success, was having the right people behind the scenes as well as in front of the camera. So obviously Falcon and the Winter Soldier was a fantastic show. I don't have that much to say about the behind the scenes because it was very generic behind the scenes stuff. And I think for the most part I had already talked about it on this podcast in some form or other. So there you go. That's the Falcon and the Winter Soldier behind the scenes segment. I think it took all of a minute. But kind of leading out from there, speaking of Disney Plus stuff coming forward, we also had the announcement just a couple of days ago that Loki is actually going to be premiering 2 days earlier than we originally thought. It's going to be premiering now on June 9th instead of the 11th, and it will be premiering then each week on Wednesdays instead of Fridays. I don't know if there's a reason behind this. I don't know if it would matter if there's a reason behind this. But that's what it is. That is reality. So that means that Black Widow is going to premiere July 9th, just before the last episode of the Loki show, assuming that they still stick with the 1 per week, 6 weeks. And so that'll be kind of a fun little jumble of MCU stuff to watch all at the same time. Speaking of MCU stuff, we had that nice fun teaser title announcement thing that came out on Monday. There's a term for it. So was it like spin reel? Something like that, and I can't remember. There's a term for it. It was a teaser. It was just a little tease to make us excited. And we'll kind of go through all the different properties and their dates and some things to talk about it. So, Black Widow obviously is going to be July 9th, 2021. Like I said just before the last episode of Loki, I don't think that was done on purpose for like, oh, we have to time it out right because something's going to happen in Black Widow. No, I don't think that's going to happen. I highly doubt that these two movies are going to be connected at all in the slightest bit. So I don't expect that. Chronologically, next there will be Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. That is obviously going to be September 3rd, 2021. There was a teensy bit of new footage in this spin reel trailer thing, showing Awkwafina's Katie specifically racing through San Francisco. That is obviously perfect between the racing through San Francisco, being in San Francisco, and karaoke. This is going to be really cool movie for Asian Americans, and people who are at all familiar with Asian American culture, and how that all ties into San Francisco and everything. I think it's awesome. I'm loving it already. Eternals I have a bit more to say about. I'm going to go through all the characters, because people I feel like are slightly finally getting into it now. Eternals will come out November 5th, 2021. We got here the first look at the characters and designs, finally. We did get also a very brief description of what the movie is going to be about. And here we have, it says, Eternals features an exciting new team of superheroes in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Ancient beings who have been living on Earth in secret for thousands of years. Following the events of Avengers Endgame, an unexpected tragedy forces them out of the shadows to reunite against mankind's most ancient enemy, the Deviants. So, obviously, if you're reading Kieran Gillen's Eternals series right now, it's kind of what's going on. I don't think they're going to at all base it in Kieran Gillen's ongoing Eternals. I don't think they're going to make that related at all, although the casting of the characters in Eternals has definitely opened that door for the characters in the comics to change those genders and races and skin colors and things. What was it? SJWing it is, I think somebody said. It's stupid, obviously. It's and of course Kieran Gillen, he also wrote out this beautiful explanation of why they're able to do that and make it make sense. But anyway, the whole thing that's happening in the Eternals series right now is that Thanos, who is of course from the line of deviants, has returned because they can do that, and he has destroyed the resurrection machine, so they can't get resurrected anymore. And he's also killed their king. So, so they have problems. It's not going to be the same problems or the same tragedy that happens in the movie. I have no doubt. Potentially, it'll have to be something to do with the snap. I don't know. But in any case, I think the popularity of this movie is going to start picking up the closer that we get. And here are the characters and some notes about them and the people who play them. We have Angelina Jolie playing Thena. Angelina Jolie, in case you are not unfamiliar with her career, has played in the past Maleficent as well as Lara Croft. She has decent enough range, in my opinion, and I'm interested in her influence on the movie coming out and doing well or not, or if that's going to be completely arbitrary and she won't have any effect on it. I don't know if we're even going to be able to tell that, but I'm just curious about it. We have Gemma Chan playing Cersei. Gemma Chan starred in Crazy Rich Asians, as well as she was one of the Kree soldiers in Captain Marvel. Obviously, super awesome actress. I've been impressed with her everywhere that I've seen her. Her doubling up on Marvel roles probably isn't going to matter, so don't get excited about that. We have Salma Hayek playing Ajak, who I believe is normally a male character. Salma Hayek has been in movies from Dusk Till Dawn as well as Grown Ups. She's a good comedy actress, I suppose. I saw something that she was in recently, and I was very, very less impressed with what I have seen her in before. But I imagine that this kind of legacy making MCU movie would be something that everybody is going to want to excel in, and they're not going to be phoning this one in. We have Richard Madden playing Icarus. Richard Madden, of course, being from Game of Thrones and Cinderella. He is a really good drama actor. I think he pulls off, he's kind of been typecasted, being pulled off as the royal, regal look. So I have no doubt that he will make a fabulous Icarus, because Icarus is he's like Superman, but he's solemn. So he'll do that perfectly fine. I also am curious to see what he's going to look like with blonde hair, if they're going to go that way. I did not take the time to pause that teaser video 50,000 times because I don't have that kind of patience or energy. So if you were able to do that and saw if he has blonde hair or not, let me know. When we have Kit Harington playing Dane Whitman, aka the Black Knight. Kit Harington has been in Game of Thrones as well, and also Pompeii, which was a fun movie, if not completely ridiculous. He's a good drama actor as well as Madden. Same kind of thing. They've both kind of been typecasted a little bit, and it's also funny because they have a kind of similar career as far as I can see, in my opinion. We have Lauren Ridloff playing Makari. She has been in The Walking Dead and Wonderstruck. I have very vague memories of having seen her when I watched The Walking Dead back in the day, but I honestly don't remember. I'm sure she was fine. I'm sure this will be fine. Then we have Kumail Nanjiani playing Kingo. Kumail has been in The Big Sick, Stuber, and Lovebirds. He's a great actor. I am a pretty big fan of his movies. I absolutely love to see him doing well, and I adore how much I have seen his career excel since I discovered him. Since I learned his name, I guess would be a better way of saying that. I love seeing him do well. He's a great actor. He represents a great group of people, and he does it really well. So love that. Love to see him doing well. Really excited to see him in the MCU. Brian Tyree Henry is playing Phastos. You may recognize him as Paperboy from Atlanta. He was also in Godzilla vs. Kong, and I believe he voiced Miles' dad in Into the Spider-Verse. Same thing for him as Kumail. I'm a big fan. I love to see his career blossoming. As I said, I watched him as Paperboy in Atlanta, which was, a number of years ago now. And as I said, he's been in a couple of things since then. Just recently, Godzilla vs. Kong. That's really exciting. I love to see, and he has a lot of range for being a big black dude. He has a lot of range that you maybe wouldn't expect, being a cliche or something, but he really does, he does a lot of different things really well. So I'm excited to see what kind of character they're going to have him play here, because he can do the whole solemn thing, he can be loud and obnoxious, and he can be, kind of a dork. So I'm excited to see what kind of character they throw him here to play. Then we have Barry Keoghan, probably mispronounced that because it's a GH and I don't know how to say that. He's playing the character of Druig. He has been in the movies American Animals as well as Dunkirk. I never saw Dunkirk, but he appears to have been some kind of key player in the plot, so he must be a pretty good drama actor, I assume. We also have Leah McHugh playing Sprite. She is a little girl of sorts. She was in movies The Lodge as well as Totem. I think those are both horror movies, so she must be really good with drama and expression, and kind of since she's playing Sprite, it definitely makes me wonder, is Sprite gonna be some twisted villain? I don't know, but it's a good sign that she can do horror movies, because she'll probably then do Sprite perfectly. And finally, for the characters of the Eternals, we have actor Ma Dong-suk, I think I pronounced his last name incorrectly, playing Gilgamesh. He has been in The Outlaws as well as Train to Busan. I have not personally seen him in anything yet, I don't think. He looks a little familiar, but I don't think I've actually seen him in anything. He seems to have a really big career from Korean movies, so that's pretty neat. It's another, non-strictly American, or I guess non-white American player who they brought in that is probably going to add some really cool stuff to the movie because of that. Based on what I could kind of see, costumes and everything look really good. I definitely think that people are going to start getting a lot more on board with this movie when Marvel starts putting out more marketing and fans start to get their first real up-close looks at everything and what's going on. And again, I know I mentioned this, but Kieran Gillen's Eternals right now has less than half a dozen issues under its belt. He's doing an excellent job of introducing you, old and new fans, to the world and the characters of the Eternals. And so I recommend that if you want to get to know them at all before the movie, definitely check that series out. And then continuing the MCU dates of when things are going to come out and title announcements that are coming along here, we have Spider-Man No Way Home is going to be happening, of course, as Spider-Man 3, December 17th, 2021, and that's the end of 2021. Then we go into 2022 with Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. They clarified, I don't think they had noted that before. The movie is going to be called not Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, it's going to be called Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. I definitely feel like that is a really important key distinction for them to be making. I haven't thought about it long enough or hard enough to quite decide what I think that means, but it definitely means something. Potentially that's a place. Or potentially I'm full of shit and I don't know. That's coming out March 25th, 2022. We also have Thor Love and Thunder coming out May 6th, 2022. And then they announced the title for the second Black Panther movie. It's going to be called Black Panther Wakanda Forever. And that comes out July 8th, 2022. Lord Almighty, they know what they're doing. They want us to cry in that movie theater. I mean, we all kind of knew it was going to happen, because how are you going to talk about, T'Challa and Chadwick Boseman and his legacy without getting a little bit emotional about it? But holy Lord, Marvel, you're really calling this shit Wakanda Forever? That's not a bad thing, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying, they are purposely making us sob like babies in the movie theater. It's kind of funny, but also it just brings some tissues with you because they're doing this on purpose. They're gonna make us cry. Appropriately, it is very appropriate that they do so. Moving on, the Captain Marvel sequel also had its its title announcement. It's going to be called The Marvels, and it will be out November 11th, 2022. Obviously, this is super exciting. It's obviously called The Marvels because we know it's going to feature Carol, Monica, as well as Kamala. I have yet to figure out if it's pronounced Kamala or Kamala. I think it's Kamala because I remember the vice president is Kamala. And then I think somebody had said it's different than that. So I think it's Kamala. I'm getting mixed up again. I just want to be able to say it right and not sound like an idiot. But anyway, so we have Ms. Marvel, we have Captain Marvel, we have Monica Rambeau. What I honestly would really love to see with this movie, I want this movie to end, or I guess, okay, let's try this. I would like Captain Marvel 3 to be Monica as Captain Marvel, Carol as a slightly less forefront character as binary, and then, you know, you can have Ms. Marvel in there with Monica or something if she's still around or whatever. But that's what I would like to see. I would like to see Monica take up the mantle of Captain Marvel. Also, the fact that it's called The Marvels, and we have Captain Marvel and Ms. Marvel, but then there's Monica. Does this mean that Monica is going to have a like they're going to call her not Mrs. Marvel, that's a stupid example, but you get what I'm saying. Are they going to give her another iteration of the Captain Marvel name, or are they going to give her one of the already predetermined, you know, comic book ones like Photon, no, not Quasar, that's not her, whatever the other ones were, that she had in the comics that I can't think of right this second. But also cool, jumping off of that kind of theory, the title sequence, obviously it was, it said The Marvels, but the S was made out of Kamala's, the lightning bolt on her dress, which, by the way, they had some costume pictures leak, or I guess fight sequence pictures leak of Ms. Marvel's dress when they're filming her show in New York or in Canada or something right now. That looks so good. If you can picture how Anthony Mackie's Captain America Falcon suit looks so much like his comic version, hers is pretty much a similar direct translation. And obviously there's some things that they tweaked very slightly because she's a real human and not a cartoon character on a page. But it looks damn good. And I guess we're going to see her for the second time. We're going to see her the first time in her show. We're going to see her for the second time in Captain Marvel 2, The Marvels. I'm just really pumped about this. I'm so excited they got a new creative team. But I keep getting off track. My whole point was, so her S is in the lightning bolt is in the S. And then I don't remember what letter it is. I think it's the A. I don't have it in front of me. But there is, I thought at first that it was eyes. But no, it's, if you can picture Carol's Holostar, her, I have this tattooed, I'm looking at it right now. If you can picture the 8-pointed star that she's got, that's her insignia, and you take the top half of it, so split, you know, the middle two things in half, and take that top half, and then kind of take and change it. I'm having a hard time describing this, but it's like they took like the top 3 points of that star and just made that like kind of an arrow shape. I can't really describe it very well, but that seems to be what Monica's hero insignia is going to be, assuming that it's there next to Kamala's. So I'm just generally super excited about this. I want her to be Captain Marvel so bad, it's not even funny. I'm sure it's funny to some people that I'm this hardcore on that. But, I mean, I have a Carol Danvers tattoo. How are you gonna... I just really want Monica to be Captain Marvel in the MCU. I think that would be the most natural next step. But anyway... Let's go ahead and wrap up the end of this list. We have Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania coming out February 17th, 2023. I believe it was a very slight differentiation in the Quantumania logo than we've seen before. Not a big deal. Evangeline Lilly, though, if you follow her or if you don't follow her on social media, I guess she posted a couple of days ago, I believe it was last week, she just had her very first costume fitting for her new Wasp outfit. So she is getting a new outfit, and things are happening. So that's exciting. It's 2 years away. It's a little under 2 years away. So no doubt they're going to get filming on this pretty quickly here. And then we have Guardians of the Galaxy 3, which does not come out until May 5th, 2023. So, gosh, that's basically 2 years from today. And then finally, they have, also just about Guardians of the Galaxy 3, it's just Volume 3 is what they're titling it. So no extra names or anything. And then they brought up a final little teaser for the Fantastic Four. It was just the generic Four logo. Nothing else. So they had to put it in there to make people... One thing they didn't talk about was Blade, and a lot of people aren't happy about that, and I too am somewhat concerned. My husband and I talked about it, and his theory is that they don't actually have Mahershala Ali on contract. When he came out at Comic-Con or Investor Day or whatever it was, I think it was Investor Day in 2019 that he came out and was announced as being Blade. They just announced that he was Blade. There was no terminology phrasing it that he was in contract, that he had been officially cast. They just said, "Meet Blade," and he comes out on stage with the Blade hat, which was awesome, and he would obviously make a killer Blade for so many reasons. But the concern now is there hasn't been a word on this shit since that announcement. And this would have been a perfect time to do that, and they didn't. So, obviously a little concerning about the Blade movie. The Fantastic Four stuff, obviously, is just like... It's gonna come out probably in, 2024, maybe 2025. I know that sounds like years and years away, but it's really... I mean, we're in 2021 right now, and when we were hearing about the stuff for the first time that we're getting right now, it was I don't even know. It was 2016, maybe? I don't know, but time happens, and we'll get there when we get there. But what I wanted to note about all of this that's kind of interesting is, I don't know if you remember, back when they first announced a sequel to the Captain America, the First Avenger movie, they had originally said that it was going to be called the Serpent Society. Now, while we might be getting the Serpent Society finally at long last in the MCU because of things that have happened in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, as well as some other things recently, that obviously was not what the second movie ended up being the Winter Soldier. The theory on that, the going theory, is that they never actually planned on making a Serpent Society movie, and that was their way of hiding the Winter Soldier plot, because there was so much, it was pretty fresh. This was only 2008 or something that Ed Brubaker brought Bucky back. It's fairly recent, as far as comics history goes, so that would be one reason why they possibly did that. I think there were other times where they changed titles through, before they came out, after having announced it as one way. The closest thing I could say to that recently, they had that whole thing, basically Tom Holland and Zendaya and everybody else basically trolling the Spider-Man fans, putting out multiple forms of the title of their third movie before finally settling on No Way Home. So, that's probably the closest thing to, doing a diversion based on the name of a movie to try and hide something, or changing things last minute. Maybe they've just gotten better at their ideas and planning things out in the future. I don't know, but that is the future of the MCU. It's bright and brilliant, and we have 2 years of solid MCU shit planned out, so settle in, folks. Alright, and that leaves us now. We are next up. Next topic is The Bad Batch Episode 1. I will probably not be going as in-depth with this as I could. It was an hour and 10 minutes, I believe, was what the whole episode was. So it was a lot of stuff that went on. I'm just gonna go over the biggest points that stood out for me after watching it. And here is I gotta start off with my easy to believe, I'd bet money on this if it mattered, prediction. And that is, the character of Omega is going to be, audience reaction wise, exactly like Ahsoka. If you remember when the Clone Wars first premiered, and fans first met Ahsoka as Anakin's Padawan, she was generally hated as a character. People couldn't jive with her relationship with Anakin, and they thought that she was overall just really annoying. And a few seasons later, she is a fan favorite character, go figure. Point being, I get the feeling here that we're going to have a similar arc of reactions towards Omega, who is of course the first female clone we've ever met, who is also kind of just an annoying little kid. But she's a cool character, there's so much potential there. She's dead interesting, she really is. She's a female clone, which in itself is probably considered a defect, and she, of course, has other, quote-unquote defects that make her special. The going theory right now seems to be that she might be force-sensitive. She seems to be very smart and skilled and talented in ways that, standard clones wouldn't be. Maybe she's crazy intelligent, is a theory. We don't really know yet, but I'm honestly looking forward to finding out and hopefully being able to see a cool, long arc of development for her character like we have through the years for Ahsoka. The Bad Batch is 5 members, but it turns out only 4 of them are actual defective clones, and the 5th defective clone is a girl. I don't remember the name of the 5th Bad Batch member who is not defective. He just, hangs with them for whatever reason. We get young Tarkin in this, the planet of Kamino, and its fun, lengthy beings. Great fan service. And when I say fan service, that's never anything negative. In my eyes, literally anything put out in the MCU, anything put out for Star Wars, period, it doesn't matter if it's a comic book or a movie or a TV show, literally all of that just existing is fan service. I hate it when people bring up fan service, it's a bad thing. That is literally entertainment. Entertainment is fan service, it's a definition. Anyway, another vent by Anna. My name's Anna, by the way. Nice to meet you. We have the character also of Crosshair, who initially was not happy by the way the team handled the Order 66 situation, which was basic. They were the only ones basically who didn't get affected because they are defective. So when the higher ups in, the military or whatever, they hear that Crosshair thinks that his crew may have acted against orders. They take Crosshair in, and they up the power of his brain chip to make it not really defective anymore, basically making him their own little spy player guy. And of course, they have to end up fighting the Bad Batch and the little girl. They have to end up fighting him to get away with Omega in the end. Also, when the episode started, we see Order 66 happen there at the beginning of the episode, and we see clones hanging around a Jedi and a Padawan. The Padawan they call Caleb. That is actually Kanan from Rebels. His real God, Anna. His real name is Caleb. And so this was young him that we just saw in this first episode. We're probably not going to see him again. One reason being they had Freddie Prinze Jr. voice him, he's a voice actor of the adult version. That was so unsettling. I think they only did that because they wanted us to be able to recognize who he was. But that somewhat deep adult voice on that pre-adolescent juvenile body for a kid just was really weird. Didn't really work out, but it got the point across. Caleb is Kanan. That concludes the Bad Batch, and now we're gonna move on to news and things, starting with Lady Killer. If you are not familiar with Lady Killer, you need to be. You should be, unless you don't like blood, in which case, avoid it. Lady Killer is by Joelle Jones. She writes and she draws it. It is the story of a 1950s housewife who, during the day, is, your standard loving, housewife, and at night she moonlights as a killer for hire. How cool is that? I remember coming across the series when my husband and I first got together. He recommended it for me. I read the first arc of it, was completely enamored and blown away. First of all, Joelle Jones is one of the most fabulous artists in comic books these days. Her art is the way that she inks is practically seductive. It's like, I don't know how to describe it besides just using weird sexual terminology, but it's beautiful art. But anyway, what we have to talk about Lady Killer, the reason that this is in the news, instead of me just talking about how great it is, which is worth, talking about also, it is fantastic. Lady Killer is being made into a Netflix movie. I believe it's going to be a movie. It doesn't actually say very much. It's probably going to be a movie. It's going to be a movie. It says Netflix has set Blake Lively to star, and Oscar-winning writer Diablo Cody to write their Lady Killer adaptation. This is all according to Deadline. It's pretty much all confirmed because Joelle Jones came out and confirmed it. So, really, really cool stuff here. It will be produced by someone called Mike Richardson and Keith Goldberg, who are parts of Dark Horse Entertainment. Will also be produced by Blake Lively with Kate Vorhoff from B for Effort. So, this is really, really interesting. The writer Diablo Cody, she has worked in the past on movies like Juno, Jennifer's Body, Young Adult, Tully, among many, many others that are very recognizable and things that I've seen and I've really enjoyed. They're all great movies, and she won her Oscar for Juno, which, if you haven't seen, it's highly problematic. Obviously, you get this you get this middle-aged adult, married man basically trying to flirt with a teenage pregnant girl. Obviously hugely problematic, and was it Jason? No, not Jason Sudeikis. Whoever it was, off-brand Space Jesus, whatever his name is, he played a great creep. I don't know if I'd watch that movie again because it was so disturbing how much he did that well. Anyway, she wrote Juno. Good movie. This is great news, honestly. As far as Blake Lively goes, I have been more and more impressed with Blake Lively's career as time has gone on. I never watched whatever that teen drama, was it Gossip Girl? Or was it the Orange County one? I don't know, Orange County. That's how cool I am, guys. I refer to the OC as Orange County. Kill me. I never watched Gossip Girl. I think that's what it was that she got her start on. But everything that I have seen her in, she has completely knocked it out of the park. When it comes to acting, I definitely think that her career is more successful than her husband's. And if you don't know who her husband is, it's Ryan Reynolds. So go figure. But yeah, I'm more impressed with her acting career than his for sure. And the fact that she's going to be producing this as well is very interesting because I don't think, based on the, what little that I've seen from her over the years, I don't think she would get involved in a project that is not going to come out completely stellar. What was that movie she was in with Anna Kendrick? A Simple Favor. If you have not seen that, I know it's on Hulu. I think it's on I think it's on HBO too, or possibly not anymore, but I know it was. Great movie. I definitely recommend watching that. That is kind of the movie that solidified, wow, Blake Lively is kind of impressive, other than being just, a goddess of figure, but Lady Killer, this is so exciting. I have no doubt this is going to be an excellent adaptation. I don't know how much Joelle Jones or any of the other creators are going to be involved with it, but just huge, massive congratulations to her and all of her team and anybody who was involved, because this is excellent. I am completely thrilled that we're going to be getting a translation of Lady Killer onto the screen. I don't think they could really mess it up that badly. I really don't think there's too much to mess up. As long as you have a 1950s housewife who is killing people at night, you're pretty much good to go. So I definitely think this is going to be great. All sounds good so far. I'm looking forward to it. Also exciting Netflix-based news, I suppose. The Red Sonja Netflix film has taken another step forward as casting the lead role of Red Sonja as actress Hannah John Kamen. You may be familiar with her from the character of Ghost from Ant-Man and the Wasp. She is honestly drop-dead gorgeous. She has olive-tone skin, I suppose, is what you would call that. She's vaguely tan. And some really, honestly incredible facial structure. We've seen her in some movies already that she can do really good fight choreography very well. So I have no doubt she's going to make an excellent Red Sonja. There are a few people who wanted a natural redhead and who are insisting that she dyes her hair red. And while it would be cool to see her with the red hair, I have to keep myself grounded in reality and what the actual point of her being called Red Sonja is. Yes, while it loosely refers to her hair, the actual reason that she's called Red Sonja has nothing to do with her hair. It's because of all the blood that she spills. That is the actual reason. The hair is just a coincidence, and it's kind of like a joke. It's like a pun, basically. Her hair being red is a pun on her name because she bleeds people out a lot. If that makes sense. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. I understand that it's, like, super petty of me to bring that up, but, like, don't get mad about her not having red hair in the movie if she doesn't have red hair. Because honestly, if I had to guess, they're probably not going to give her fire engine red hair the way Sonja has in the comics. They're probably going to give her red tinted hair. I don't see a point to them giving her the Scarlett Johansson treatment with the red hair. It's probably just going to be tinted because that's honestly more realistic. Next up, we have some theorizing, I guess. Some discussion about the upcoming Superman movie written by John Ridley. Is that right? Yeah, John Ridley, who has won Oscars, of course, for 12 Years a Slave, for writing that. Here's the thing about why we're talking about Superman and this movie, the John Ridley Superman movie, today. There seems to be a lot of concern that Warner is thinking of casting their we know it's going to be a black Superman. Apparently, Warner might be considering this. There is concern, is more accurate, that Warner is considering casting their black Superman as the character of Clark Kent. I have to say, while the obvious choice should be to use one of their already existing black character options, like Val Zod, I can't really get mad about a black Clark Kent because, well, he's a fictional alien originally intended for children's comics, so they have, a bit of wiggle room to work there. And being white is definitely not a key element of Kal-El's character in any sense of the word. So it would really just be, if they did that, it would be an interesting twist on the life of Clark Kent, I suppose, having to deal with racism as an actual alien that nobody would really know he's an alien. But then again, back to what I said before, yeah, the obvious choice is to do what use the already existing black characters, that you can flesh out a new story instead of repeating the same crap we've seen before. There was also some discussion that it might be a period piece, which is kind of crazy. What they used was 20th century. Like, they referred to the 20th century as, like, historical. Which is like, how I guess Gen Z kids refer to the 90s as in the 20th century. Or in the 1900s, is what they refer to the 90s as the 1900s. How nuts is that? I was born in the 1900s. I mean, obviously I was, but, like, just calling it that just seems so long ago. It wasn't that long ago. I'm getting older and I'm starting to realize it. It's a phenomenon. Anyway, back to what I was saying. In this article that I believe it was The Hollywood Reporter put out, kind of just dancing around this whole theory they made up, if you actually read it, it doesn't mention the name Kal-El except for one time when it basically pulls that guess completely out of their ass, kind of just merely assuming that the movie's going to be about Clark. There is no solid source or evidence, and the article itself admits that the movie will be probably changing drastically before we get any actual real news about it. So while it is kind of stupid for people to be worried about it at all, there is actually not really a reason to be worried about it at all. And finally, for the last topic of today's podcast episode, briefly adding some more news onto the Sailor Moon Eternal movie, which will be coming out on June 3rd. Today was released a trailer for the movie. It was definitely what you would call a teaser trailer, because it was just like a random jumble of things to get you excited about it. And it confirmed, most exciting thing probably for me is that it's going to be 2 full-length movies. as far as I understand it now, based on the trailer. The trailer really seemed to push that this is 2 full movies. This is not going to be one movie split into 2 parts. It's 2 separate feature-length things. Apparently. If that ends up being wrong, I'm going to be so disappointed because I'm like 99% sure that's what they meant when they said 2 full movies or whatever it was they said in the trailer. Really exciting. I have just under a month to finish that 7th volume of the manga, which if you're getting the Eternal editions just like I am, that is what these movies, I suppose, will be entirely based off of. And in watching the trailer, I kind of have to wonder if they're even bothering making this for kids anymore, or trying to make it seem like it's for kids, or if they just kind of like, they know that their audience is just, it's a lot of adults. I don't have the nostalgia factor for it, so that's not the reason why I'm coming here. I'm really just a big fan of the stuff because I'm that much of a dork, and I think these things are cool as a fully grown adult getting into it for kind of the first time in the past couple of years. So, it's, cheesy and, kind of lame, but I love it. It makes me so happy. I'm so excited that this is going to be 2 full movies. I'm just excited. I have 2 Sailor Moon, I have Sailor Moon and Sailor Jupiter, the SH Figure Arts action figures, and I really want to get more, but they haven't updated all of them. They've updated some of them, and I want to get updated versions because they're better for, mechanical reasons. I'm not a weeb. I don't think that's a word I've ever used to describe myself. I just have things that I like. And as I get, closer to 30, it turns out Sailor Moon is way up there on the list of things that I like. So that wraps up this week's episode. We're going to end it on that again. If you would like to find me online for any reason at all, my website is sensationalshegeek.weebly.com. It's got the Weebly extension because I don't pay for it. I have a Facebook page, but I never check it. I have a Instagram page. It is Anna with the Comics because that is my name. And I only post about comic stuff, so there you go. I also have a Twitter. It is called Savage She-Geek, because sensational was too many letters. And you can find this podcast anywhere podcasts stream except Pandora still. Stupid Pandora. Including YouTube. So anywhere you watch this, like, subscribe, comment, favorite, share, post, link, capture, all the words, all the things. Do the things, so that we can get more people involved, and hopefully somebody will like this and be like, yo, I'm going to share this with my friends, and then more people will get involved. So, like I said at the beginning, give yourself a second, maybe before or after you listen to this podcast, take some deep breaths, center yourself, and, if you can, just relax a little bit. I hope that this podcast gave you some enjoyment, because it certainly gives me a buttload of enjoyment making it. So as long as people are enjoying listening to it, I will continue making it. Meantime, I will be back for the next episode on Monday, the 10th, I think. Yes, Monday the 10th, where I will be covering comic book pull list for the following week, as well as anything that may happen between now and then. I think I'll also be covering Black Lightning episode 10, if that happened this week. I have not watched it yet, but I'll probably watch it this weekend and cover it on Monday. So that'll be Monday's episode. It'll be episode 17A. And until then, be nice to yourself as well as your loved ones. Don't take people for granted. And stay sweaty about your shit that you like, because that's what you gotta do to get through life, man. Get sweaty. Do it. Do it. Do it.